The Q is back. The Super Bowl is coming, and all-star games can go away. All that and more at Sports QuaranTV. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sports QuaranTV. Chris, Dobson, Gerry Green. You heard it off the hop. We've got a great show. We've got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, we're going to kick it right off where we usually start because it's back, baby. The QMJHL is back, Gerry.
Yes, I'm liking it, Chris, and I'm liking. It seems like Charlottetown Islanders picked up right where they left off. I mean, they can't play at home, so they've been playing on the road. They played 3 games on the road, Chris, and outscored their opposition 16-2. Okay, one of those games versus the Quebec Rampart, who are one of the top 3 teams. They've been ranked with Charlottetown in the Kia top 10 rankings of the CHL this week. So it was a hard-fought battle. The shots were even and nuts, but Charlottetown gets a 4-0 victory. So here they still sit on top of the overall standings and, of course, the Maritime standings, Chris. And it's just quietly, I think it's been quietly since the start of the season. They're just kind of been there, and no one's been able to dethrone them. They got a big game coming up this week against Bathurst in Bathurst before they get to play at home next week. But to me, they're the team to beat. The Bathursts and the St. John Sea Dogs, who enhanced their teams and have had a great restart themselves. They still got a lot of work to do to catch up to Charlottetown, who I think quietly have set themselves up pretty nicely.
Oh, I think so. I don't know if I'd use the word quietly, to be honest. You look at what Jim Halton's done with that organization, and every year they're good. And it's no surprise. They wanted to win this year. They're all in. They did it on, if you look at how everything is playing out for them, they made great acquisitions pre-season, and then they made some great ones during the trade deadline. Everything is going to be floating. It'll be curious. I don't know if they'll be able to do this thing long term. I've been waiting for years now to see Charlottetown contend. Although for some reason it always seems to come up a little short. I'll be curious. The one team I have been super pleased to watch. I shouldn't say the one team, because I have really enjoyed watching St. John since the restart, but this weekend as well. The Moncton Wildcats had 2 home games this weekend, and both games absolutely put their work boots on. And they came out and they won in a very entertaining fashion. Both of them comes back down a goal with a minute to go. They tie the game up, and one of them goes into a shootout, which they win. One of them goes into overtime, which they win. And they're not like, 1-2 goals, like, 2-1 games. We're talking 6-5, 7-6. Like, it's exciting. The offense is clicking. Yeah, absolutely. And I love watching that. I love watching the Wildcats do that. Now, on the flip side of things, you mentioned St. John and whether or not they'll be in the upper echelon of the Maritime Division. And to me, watching what the new guys brought to the table when I watched the Sea Dogs during their Quebec road trip, I loved it. Philip Daou fit in real nice, which we knew he was going to. You're starting to see some resurgence of what's going on. The blue line's chipping in. William Dufour, I think he had a 5-point night a couple days ago.
He leads the league in scoring now, Chris, and leads the league with goals as well. I mean, and again, that's one of those trades that Trevor Georgie makes that was last summer, and how great he has been for that team all season long. Bathurst has only played really 1 game. All these teams in the Maritime Division are going to be on the road, and they're going to be on the road this week too, Chris. Cape Breton hasn't even played yet since the restart, because they have that.
I almost forgot Cape Breton was still in the league.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was fun to see Moncton get a couple of big victories. They've got muddy mountains to climb. They got some tough opposition in the Maritime Division, but I still believe the league championship series is going to be between 2 Maritime Division teams.
And I do agree with, and you got to tip your cap too. There's another player I want to mention while we're talking about the Q, and that is what a great story coming out of Halifax with that young Boucher coming on in. And him putting up, I think he scored 5 goals in the first couple of games he's been there. Great story from the Mooseheads. I absolutely love that. And I criticized Halifax bad during the trade period. I thought it was, the whole way they handled the Elliot Desnoyers situation. I was hard on it. I was hard on Cam Russell. But now I get it. And, having a veteran presence like that in your room might make a lick of a difference here. And I think it could be a good thing for them. Either way, I just don't know. I don't know.
I think he's playing with Desnoyers, and Desnoyers had 4 goals the other night as well. And the funny thing about this Halifax team, and I hope Elliot can Desnoyers can get his head around and play and win and do what he needs to do to be a professional or a pro type of player.
Right.
They've done it without Zachary Leroux. He had a 6-game suspension that came on the last day. Remember on December 18th, that suspension for cross-checking in Moncton. So he hasn't even been able to play yet, which is kind of interesting.
He'll be a great addition when he gets back. Gerry, let's move on because the Super Bowl is coming up just days away. We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
We'd get shot if we didn't. You got Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals and Matt Stafford and the Rams. I was reading up the other day on SoFi Stadium. I think it's the second most expensive stadium in sports history.
It is amazing. I remember last year when they didn't have fans in there and how interesting it was to see the layout of the way the grandstands and the stands were in that stadium. But it is a marvel of technology and of architecture. And to me, I think there's a couple of storylines here, and it's about the quarterbacks, of course. Oh. It's about Joe Burrow in his first. It's about Matt Stafford in his first Super Bowl. Not very often you have first overall picks, quarterback overall picks, face each other in the Super Bowl. The last one they said it was Cam Newton against Peyton Manning was the last time it had happened. I saw that the other day. But to me, I think LA should win and could win. I think everything's fallen in place for Cincinnati for them to get there. If we can go back to that Kansas City game, which I know there's some people that don't want us to talk about it, but I think some cockiness on behalf of the Chiefs that didn't allow them to win that game, which I think they should have inside the 5-yard line. We've talked about it before. So, but I think Matthew Stafford, I think for him, everything has fallen into place. And I just think he's the maturity that I think is going to be necessary in the Super Bowl, but not that Burrow can't handle the bright lights, but I just hope, I would like to see Matt Stafford get it because Burrow's going to get a lot of more chances.
And don't kid yourself. I mean, everybody knows the Rams are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. If you're out there and you're talking to your bookie, they are the favorite. Now, there's a couple storylines on my front as far as that goes. I mean, you got to remember this. Joe Burrow could be the first player in the history to win all three. You know, the national title, the Heisman, and the Super Bowl. That would be ridiculous. He'd be the first QB, first QB, excuse me. The big thing that I question is that during the regular season, the Cincinnati Bengals were the most sacked team in the NFL. Watching the last couple of games that, we saw Cincinnati roll through, Joe Burrow's lucky to have escaped with these wins because he was sacked 12 times. Okay. There's another storyline. You got to wonder about the CJ Sama. I mean, whether the tight end for the Bengals is going to be there, I think that could be a big factor for them. But the other question coming on in is how hot Von Miller has been, because I think he's got 6 sacks in his last 7 games.
Well, the problem for Cincinnati is they've got LA's got 2 weapons now. They've got Kupp and they got Odell Beckham Jr. on the other side. Yes, and he had over 100 yards in the championship game, the conference championship game. Over 100 yards in beating San Francisco. And on the other side, Kupp had over 100 yards as well. So you got a double threat there. But they do need to have the running game. The running game is important for both of these teams. And it always comes down, Chris, you can look at all the numbers and who's going to be hot and who's going to be not. You cannot turn the ball over and you cannot take penalties. Those are 2 simple things you can tell your players. I mean, you can't always prevent turnovers, but turnovers can be a huge factor and are usually a huge factor.
Another key storyline people have been paying attention to is Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey, best on best.
Yes.
It's going to be an exciting Super Bowl, man. I mean, this is I love the fact, and again, once the Colts were eliminated, I wanted to see the Bill win. I want to see the Bills get through, but they didn't. But I'm excited for this. There's no Patrick Mahomes. There's no Tom Brady. There's no, these. I'm fired up. I love seeing Stafford going with Joe Burrow. I don't know. I want to get your opinion. I want your thoughts. Who do you think wins this thing?
I think the LA Rams do. I think the experience of already being there as a coaching staff, McVay and his boys, and Cincinnati again has been riding this high and this momentum, and maybe destiny's is for them. But I really think the Rams at home, just like Tampa Bay did last year, I think will overwhelm the rookie quarterback.
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to root Joe Burrow. I think that he's going to find a way to make it happen, and he's going to wear the biggest chain humanly possible on national television when he wins it. I'm going Bengals. You're taking Rams. We'll find out who wins next week. Gerry, let's move on to the NHL because there's a few things we got to talk about. Most of these things happening hot off the press in Montreal. Dom Ducharme out. Marty St. Louis in. Which was a bit of a shocking move to me. When the rumors started to flow, I know there was a tank, but the fact of the matter is the Montreal Canadiens right now, as it stands today, now have 2 former coaches and a former GM still on payroll.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, Chris. I thought Claude Julien got a raw deal. I didn't think the performance of the Montreal Canadiens was based on his coaching ability because he's a proven commodity. Dominic Ducharme then takes over from there and gets a 3-year contract last summer. And here he's got 1 year into it in a season for Montreal, Chris, that really is a perfect storm from what they did last year and getting all the way to the final. And people keep harping on that. But there is a perfect storm here of bad things that have happened for the Montreal Canadiens in regard to injury and handling of personnel that has really put them in the condition that they're in. Right. Is Dom Ducharme part of that? Is Dom Ducharme's handling of personnel a problem? Maybe it was.
Right. And the rumors floating around, of course, was that Dom Ducharme lost the room. And every reporter out there has look, that's what reporters do. It's their job to report these things because they're looking for clicks. They're looking for likes. Neither one of us here know what happened in that locker room. Something's not right. The fact that Cole Caulfield is still in the 4th line, mistake. Although, and if I'm Cole Caulfield right now, the fact that you got Marty St. Louis on your bench right now, one of the greatest small scorers of all time, you are fired up and ready to go. Jeff Petrie looks like an absolute waste of space out there. He's a waste of contract. Something's not right there. And I think, the rumors floating around that he's publicly asked for a trade. Gorton has announced that has not happened at this point. I don't know what's happening there. But it's just an interesting storyline to me because in a year where Montreal has only won 8 games all season long, they've now lost 5 in a row. They came off their worst loss to New Jersey. This was an embarrassing one for them.
Embarrassing indeed.
So something had to happen. But in a year where you're tanking, it looks like, they're tanking for Shane Wright at this point. Not that it's even an intentional tank. I think they're just a bad hockey club.
Yeah.
Something is not right. I feel for the goaltenders that are there. The blue line has looked atrocious. The only spot on for me from a blue line perspective has been Alexander Romanov. He's looked great, but overall the Habs are set. But what was interesting to me, Gerry, about bringing Marty St. Louis in so quickly to replace Dom Ducharme, it's not like they promoted Luke Richardson to an interim head coach. They brought in Marty St. Louis, but they're keeping the interim tag on it. So it's something I noticed that, and that was interesting to me.
Well, it's also interesting that he doesn't have any coaching experience, and he was there at the ready to be dropped in, parachuted in to take over from Ducharme. That's curious to me.
So overall, I don't know what's going to happen. The trade deadline's coming, and you're going to see a lot of moves out of Montreal. You got to get what's right. Ben Sherratt, Jeff Petrie. There's a lot of pieces that could come into play, and you got to start moving some contracts, some guys. There's going to be a lot of space there. You're probably going to see Montreal eat some salary just to move some of these guys out to kind of see if you can't help, make teams making big moves, similar to what happened with David Savard going to Tampa, being a 3rd team in just to absorb some salary. It wouldn't shock me if you see something like that happen in Montreal because they've got the cap space available. Before we move on, NHL, the All-Star game just went by. I want to get your thoughts. Did you like the NHL All-Star game? Is it something that you're into?
I like the thinking outside the box of the NHL All-Star Game. I must say I'm intrigued by the 3-on-3 and conferences or divisions going against divisions. But it wasn't something must-see TV, Chris. Especially they have the skills competition on Friday night, and then they have the hockey game on Saturday afternoon, wasn't it? I believe it was in the afternoon.
Yeah, it was late Saturday. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon our time.
I got stuff to do. I can't be sitting there watching an All-Star game on Saturday afternoon, but I just don't. The All-Star game doesn't grab me. But the other thing I love about All-Star games, and this is why the leagues are going to keep them, they're a great marketing tool, but you have to have your best players there. And Sidney Crosby not being there, and Sidney's not having a great year, but he has better numbers than Nick Suzuki. but you have to have a representative from each team. I understand that.
Right.
But the fact you can't marquee or can't roll out one of your best players in your league in Sidney Crosby is a miss.
No Crosby, no Ovechkin, also another huge miss this year. But what I do like is, and I enjoy the 3-on-3 a little bit, but the skills comp, it allows guys, and don't forget, like all-star games are for the fans. It's for families to take their kids to see their stars, have a good time. Anyways, but guys like Trevor Zegras, that's what it's all about.
Okay, Chris, what about that one-on-one competition? Was it Shattenkirk that won it? How does that happen? Who's the defenseman for Vegas?
I can't get into that because I'm so furious at the fact that happened, and we have to talk about the Olympics, so we don't have time to talk about it.
All right.
But it's a good thing because it infuriates me that the NHL broke that. We've got about 2 minutes left total before we move on to our next segment. We got to talk about the Olympics because we're a weekend now, and is there anything that stood out for you? Something that's impressed you?
Well, me with curling, disappointed with Holman and Morris not getting any further than they could in the mixed doubles. And curling's coming up, and Brad Gushu and Jennifer Jones are going to make Canada proud, I'm sure. And then I watched the Canadians and the Americans play in women's hockey, which is the only two teams that are worth watching. And what a battle it was, typical Canada and U.S. But other than that, Chris, there's nothing, and the timing is off for me. I'm not seeing things live because there's a 13-hour difference between us and China. So it hasn't rubbed me where I itch, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. No, and that's fair. The time zone obviously makes it a big challenge. But for me, the things that have stood out so far, you look at Courtney Sareau, obviously a local, speed skater here in Moncton, won her heat in both the individual and the team relay. Love that in the 1,000-meter. But the thing that stood out so far, which was weird for me, was the whole ROC concept of the women's hockey situation, where the women our Canadian women had to play with a mask on because there was some issues with the test results.
Yeah,
it didn't make sense to me. It's so broken right now. I mean, now men's hockey starts on Thursday. I'm excited for that from a Canadian's perspective. Obviously we've seen a lot of these young guys, even from former Q guys and former NHL guys getting, but overall, those are the things I liked watching. I watched Mark McMorris on the snowboard doing what he does. Like, I'm intrigued and I really enjoy it, but overall it's just something that I like you. And I don't know if it's a time zone thing or not. I just know that I haven't been up and I don't know. It's just not for me. I'm excited. I'll keep watching. I'm fired up. But overall, the Olympics has been good. It's just been different for me this year. Well, Gerry, it's time. It's time to debate this. Number one, you might as well just sign, seal, deliver it. Book it right now. The Colorado Avalanche will win the Stanley Cup.
You are crazy. How can you think that Colorado, who've been hot and cold and have had the injuries, their star player, Nate McKinnon's been down more than once, not only with COVID, but with injuries as well. And if you take a look at the standings, Chris, if you open a newspaper, well, you wouldn't read the newspaper, but if you open a website and check the standings in the NHL, go to NHL.com, the West is wide open for anybody. Over in the East, you've got some more definitive guys that are trying to win championships, including the Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay, Toronto, Carolina, you name it.
Yeah, look, and I like Florida. Don't kid yourself. At this point, I think it's a two-dog race, but I don't think they're even in the same ballpark as what Colorado Avalanche are doing right now. You talked about Nate McKinnon going down a couple times. Yeah, you know what? He's been down, but he's back up now. They're 9-0-1 in their last 10. The trade deadline is just a few weeks away. No, man, there's no way. They're going to acquire what they need to acquire, which I think you're going to find them probably look at. I don't know whether it's going to be net minding or what their situation is going to be. They're one key piece away from being absolutely unstoppable. We'll start there.
Well, the rumor is Claude Giroux, and I don't think that's happening, but that's the rumor. Claude Giroux's going to Colorado. That would be their missing piece. Still, Claude Giroux, to me, hardworking, put him anywhere in the lineup type of player. Maybe he would get rejuvenated in Colorado. I don't know if it's the missing piece for them or not.
Doesn't matter. They're winning the Stanley Cup. Anybody, if you can't see that, as far as reading a newspaper go, this isn't 1974. I have the internet and it updates in real time. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's a done deal. Book it. Avalanche Cup winners.
Move on. I think I'm right. I think it's coming out of the East. It's coming out of the East.
All right. Well, we're going to stick 2 topics in hockey. First, debate this. We did a couple football topics. This time we're doing a couple hockey topics. Number 2, if it happens, and it's rumored to be possible, the return of PK Subban in Montreal, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, here we go. You know how I am about retreads. and bringing somebody back to their glory days when they were in Montreal. PK Subban, I don't know, Chris, if you've ever said this to me, but either they loved him or they hated him in Montreal. Sometimes they were booing him because
nobody hated him. Nobody.
Oh, okay, sure, okay. Some people were celebratory when he left town and got Shea Weber. A little bit skeptical about Weber because he might have been a little bit older, but I think Weber's certainly shown that he was of good value to get him in PK Subban. And in the meantime, what has PK Subban done since he left Montreal? No, he just bounced around to another few teams that can't stand him. I don't think coming back to Montreal is going to help him at all, and it's not going to help the team at all either.
Luckily for me, the debate this wasn't who won the Shea Weber trade, because at the end of the day, I agree with that. Yes, Montreal had to make that deal at the time. Anytime you can get Shea Weber in your lineup, you do it. But as far as why hasn't PK Subban performed since then, well, he's coming off a massive contract deal that he took. And then ultimately, if I ripped you out of the heart of Miramichi, which is what you love more than anything else, you wouldn't perform up to par either. So as far as I'm concerned, no, he did okay. You know what? His first year in Nashville, he was fine. Now, my argument is this. If you're the Montreal Canadiens right now, who are an absolute dumpster fire, now, what you're doing right now is PK Subban's an unrestricted free agent next year. In an interview this week with, on his return to Montreal, the question was asked, if the opportunity presented itself, would you come back to Montreal? And he made it very clear. If they wanted me, I would listen. Now, if you can get PK Subban on like a 2-year deal at like $2-3 million max, look, there's not a whole lot of things to market in Montreal right now. So if you could bring back a guy whose heart, soul, and love is in that city, why the hell wouldn't you do it? I would think he's an absolute great fit. The fans would welcome him back with open arms. I can go get my PK Subban jersey off the shelf and we can hang that behind me. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Maybe Montreal is going to do exactly what they did and how they blew that Corey Perry thing. Corey Perry comes back and plays well, and they don't give him another contract. Whether or not PK Subban comes for 2 years or probably 1 year, and then maybe he refines himself and away it goes again. I just don't think it's a good idea to bring PK Subban back to Montreal.
Funny how you criticize the Corey Perry trade, but you don't give them credit for the Alexander Radulov trade. Anyways, Jerry, it's time for the wrap. Let's get into it. It's everyone's favorite part of the show. We're going to start right off the hop. I want an update on New Brunswick curling.
Well, you have to get an update on New Brunswick curling, Chris. How exciting was it that last week Andrea Crawford got out to a great start at the Scotties that was held in Thunder Bay, heard her team from the Capital Winter Club in Fredericton, how everybody was starting to watch, everybody was paying attention to curling. I had friends say to me, I was really invested into those games, and every rock and every end was important to them. That's what can happen when you have a horse in the race, and that was the horse in the race for New Brunswick. And Andrea Crawford and her team picked up a bronze medal. We salute them here on Sports QuaranTV. And also, of course, the Tankards being held in Miramichi. James Grattan is the expected favorite coming up to go to the Brier later on in March. How about the Vancouver Canucks? Is there some trade talk going on there, Chris?
There's a lot of trade talk going on right now. Jim Rutherford's been fielding calls left, right, and center, and not on key pieces. Like, rumor mills are floating around that a guy like Connor Garland right now is seeking a lot of interest from teams in the East. The New Jersey Devils, the New York Rangers, the Boston Bruins. Could we see Connor Garland head home to be close to his family? Connor coming off a $6 million extension or signed contract in Vancouver, wants to trade with him and Ekman Larson, go to Vancouver. According to sources, whether it happens or not, you know how the NHL trade thing goes, but overall rumors are Connor Garland is gaining a lot of interest. Jerry, sad news out of the MHL, especially up your way.
Yeah, and Chris, Jamie Keys has Moncton roots. He was born in Moncton, came to Miramichi over 20 years ago, and has been involved with the Miramichi Timberwolves for 10 years plus, and unfortunately passed away at the young age of 53 last week. We send our condolences to his wife, Kathy, and their family and their friends. He was a big part of the Timberwolves organization. It's going to be a sad time for the rest of the season because he was a jolly old soul around the rink and had his hand on everything as the president. So we send our condolences today on a sad note in the MHL. The MHL is back and is on the ice and will be playing this weekend. The Pro Bowl played last weekend, Chris, yay or nay on that?
This will be short and sweet. The Pro Bowl sucked. Overall, there's no nice way to put it. It's the most boring game of flag football I've ever seen in my entire life. They should be embarrassed if I'm the National Football League that this thing is even real. I understand the Pro Bowl's for the fans. I get it. But doing this a week before the Super Bowl, it's just foolish to me. I think it's stupid. stop it, let it go. The AUS, we got good news. It's resumed in New Brunswick.
Yeah, not only hockey, Chris, but all sports. But the problem is, let's say if you're talking about the Aigle Bleu of Moncton and the Reds of UNB, they can only play each other until the Nova Scotia and PEI teams come on board on February 14th, which will be next week. But UNB and Moncton playing this week, and in all sports, be it volleyball and other ways, it's glad to get them back on the courts and in the rinks in the AUS. The Saints had some problems, and what's going on in New Orleans, Chris?
Well, let's start with what happened in Vegas, Jerry. The New Orleans Saints are now going to try to be looking to see what's going to happen in this situation with Alvin Kamara, of course, the star running back, charged with assault and battery. A couple hours after the Pro Bowl ended, apparently I was looking at reports here earlier, it said that, there was an incident that took place before the Pro Bowl. Stories are coming out now. The NFL knew that the Las Vegas Police Department knew what had happened, but they waited for the game to end. Either way, Kamara could be facing some serious jail time, Jerry. What a huge blow to the New Orleans Saints if this comes down. I'll be curious. I'll be watching this one real closely. What about the NHL? There's a couple suspensions looming, Jerry.
Well, our buddy Brad Marchand, the little ball of hate, which I enjoy watching him play, but sometimes he goes off the rails. And punching the goaltender the other night, Tristan Gerry of Pittsburgh, and then stuck his stick in his face. Could be a suspension there. I think you might be surprised. It might only be a couple of games. Meanwhile, Marcus Foligno of the Minnesota Wild puts his knee on the Winnipeg Jets' Lowry's face. And I think that's more violent than anything Marchand. My point is, I think Foligno is going to get more games than Marchand. Wait and see. We'll see what happens. Arizona is going to play in a 5,000-seat arena. Is that crazy, Chris?
I've literally come to the point where I think that they're using the Arizona Coyotes to launder money through the National Hockey League, because if this was any team, for some reason, they have bailed this organization out time after time after time after time. We were talking off camera, and if this was the Winnipeg Jets, this team would already have moved twice by now, because it doesn't make any sense. I don't know, Houston is chomping at the bit to get a hockey team right now. Arizona almost got kicked out of their building for not paying bills. Yeah. And now all of a sudden they're looking to move into a 5,000-seat facility. How does the NHL let this happen? How does Gary Bettman allow this to take place? It's a joke. It's an embarrassment of a franchise. They need to be moved. Do it now. Give the fans what they want. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. We've had a great time doing the show. Thanks for watching. We will see you next Thursday.